Melissa here on the subtropical Florida Gulf Coast, Zone 10. And in the excitement of gardening and growing your own food, you may have concerns come up as well. Like, can I garden resourcefully, inexpensively? Maybe you have a lack of mobility, energy, and time. You have a small space, or maybe you have a large space and gardening on that space can feel a little intimidating. And the big question, is it worth it? In this video, I want to show you how food container gardening can be an answer to these concerns. Gardening in itself can be very resourceful, and especially with food container gardening, you are taking a food container and reusing it instead of throwing it away. So that alone is very resourceful. And what ties into that is food container gardening can be more inexpensive because, again, you're already using something you probably have on hand or someone you know is just going to throw away. Why not use it in the garden? And if you have a lack of mobility, it's hard for you to move around. A food container garden can easily move around where you need it to go. If you need to move them in more sunlight, in more shade, get them out of the rain, or you would just like to set them onto a table, a bench, or a ledge, it is decently easy to do that. If you have a lack of energy, again, these containers can easily move around. So instead of using a lot of energy that you might not have in hauling large things back and forth, food container gardening may be very doable. Lack of time. You're busy in life. Instead of managing a larger garden, weeding, watering, harvesting, all that, this is a smaller space to manage. You only need maybe a handful of minutes each day just to keep things watered, maybe do a slight bit of weeding, a bit of harvesting. So it's something that's not going to take you all day. And if you have a small space like a balcony or just a little area, small yard, this again is not a large space to tend to. If all you have is that small area, you can still grow some of your own food. Or maybe it's the opposite. You have a large space. You want to garden and grow your own food, but that large space feels intimidating. Food container gardening can be the perfect gateway. So that's the list of reasons why food container gardening can actually be a good answer to some of these concerns. Now to answer the big question, is it worth it? Here are some reasons why I think it is, in no particular order. Number one, growing some of your own food, like in food containers, can help develop good habits of providing for yourself. Also, the good habit of cultivating a plant and harvesting instead of just relying on the simple run to the grocery store or have someone send it to you at your doorstep. These are great ways to develop resiliency and self-sufficiency. Number two, it can also help you learn how to grow your own food. Instead of cultivating a very large space when you're starting out especially, food container gardening can teach you what a plant needs, how to tend to it, harvesting. It allows you to focus on that space instead of feeling overwhelmed. And I think knowing how to grow your own food through experience is very important. Number three, you can grow a lot in a small space, like in a food container garden. Just last year, before I had this channel, I just threw in an extra Mizuna seedling inside a food container, and I was amazed at how big it grew and how much it grew for that little food container space. And my thought was, if you had like 10 or 20 of these things, maybe had different types of lettuces in each, for example, you could potentially grow yourself a salad and some of your family members a salad every few days. And when you think about it, that's huge. That's a lot for a small space. Number 4, in food containers, you can grow yourself better nutritious food. I've looked at some charts that, scientists and all that put up about showing how the quality of food goes down after it is harvested. And when you think in farming and that sort of thing, where farmers are growing food for the grocery stores for us, it's not harvested that moment, brought to the store, and then we eat it. No, there's a lot of time and handling and back and forth that goes on behind the scenes before that food gets to your table. Within a short amount of time, the nutrition is being depleted in those foods. And that's not even including when it's harvested and how it's grown and all that. But in food container gardening, you can potentially just, hey, I need this herb or whatever for my meal. You just go right outside and harvest it, and you put it on your table in a matter of minutes sometimes. And a lot of that nutrition, because of possibly how you've grown it as well, and harvesting and right to the table, will give you higher nutrition in your food. Number 5, appreciating how food grows. And I'll tell you, when I go to the grocery store and I'm in the produce section and I'm seeing everything there and I grow a decent number of it, there is a whole different experience that happens when I see a bug hole in some of the leafy greens, or maybe a deformed fruit, or maybe I don't even see something that I am looking for because it's out of season. I understand, because as a gardener, you know how your food grows, you know what happens. It becomes natural because it is. Not only am I having a good day at the grocery store because I just know how the food is grown, but you're also giving a good day to the workers. You're not sitting there complaining about everything because you understand how food grows. It's not a big deal. And also with the lines of appreciation, as I'm eating something I've known I've grown and I harvested, prepared it, there's a whole different feeling to eating than just getting fast food, throwing a box meal together without much thought or care, really. A whole different experience. So yeah, that alone can be a big deal in growing your own food in food containers. And last but not least, and probably not the only good reason why it is worth growing your own food in food containers, but there is a lot you can grow in these small spaces. Just some examples. Dwarf tomatoes. I haven't personally done it, but I've seen people grow tomatoes in small pots. Not super small pots, but in the size of a food container. Maybe even a small pepper plant. Perhaps you like super duper hot peppers, but you don't need a lot of them. This could be a way to give yourself just enough. Bush beans, that would be perfect. Line them up with some bush beans. I hope to experiment in the future with growing pole beans in food containers, so yeah, that might be down the line. Herbs, oh, definitely you could do that. Some flowers. Some flowers are edible, so that can be even adding to your salads and that sort of thing. And of course, salad greens, cooking greens, all those things you can easily do in food containers. There's probably a lot more, I'm just not thinking of it, but yeah, definitely let us know in the comments. So is it worth it? I think yes. Now, how did I create my food container garden? I first did look at the sizes of the containers. You also need to think of what you want to grow, think of the varieties. Like I said, keep it small, find things that are productive, and that's part of the fun of gardening, experimenting. Big thing you need to remember is poke holes in your containers. When you think about it, when you're watering and there are no holes in your container, that container is going to fill up and whatever plant you have in there will drown. For a growing medium, I would use some potting mix. I usually make my own. I mean, this is kind of like a whole other video, but basically I personally put in about 1/3 each of some compost, some I use peat moss as a more fine and moisture absorbing material to keep the water in, but also a draining material, and I happen to use sand. I know there's other things you can use as well when you're making your own. You can also buy potting mix at the store, and that's all made for you ready to go, and sometimes it does have fertilizer already in it to help feed your plants. That's something you will need for your plant over time. And when I'm making my own, I usually put in about a handful of 10-10-10, chicken poo, blood and bone, and also very important to put your mulch on top to help keep moisture in. And mulch also breaks down over time, which will also help feed your plant. And as the season goes on, there is a time where I will start doing a little bit of liquid fertilizer. For me, I mean, you can buy it at the store, but for me, I use my own homemade compost tea, very diluted with water, just to give a little nutrition to the plants, and it appears to be working so far. You're going to want to make sure you keep feeding your soil, because it is your soil that is going to be feeding your plants, and all they have is what's in that food container. So something to keep in mind. And of course, you know, I made sure they were watered and stayed moist in that soil. But also I made sure they got enough sun, and if they had too much sun, I was able to pick them up and move them and put them in the shade. So yeah, things have been looking really good in the garden, the food container garden. Yeah, let's go outside and take a look. So here it is, my food container garden. We have lettuces, kale, green onions, more lettuce, a food container with self-seeded Suriname spinach. I have planted salad burnet in there, along with another free plant of lettuce from the garden. And of course, a Mizuna. That is what I grew last year. Now, like with gardening, there's always going to be issues that arise, and the issues that I had this year with my food container garden is, number one, we had bugs come and nip at a lot of the seedlings I had originally planted. I did bull's blood beet. You can eat the root of that beet, but it's known for its red leaves, and I had that last year growing and used it in my salads and loved it. Tried it this year, the bugs were relentless, so I didn't continue with that. But the salad burnet had bugs on it as well, nipping at it, but it pulled through. I never had this problem before, but fruit rats ate my lettuce. I bought some lettuce starts from the local store and was experimenting with that as well, and overnight they took that lettuce down to the ground. Now with lettuce, it can come back all right. Oh, let me show you that. And it did. It took some time to come back. So as I was waiting, I did prepare for more food containers that I had. Another issue I had were with my green onions. Now I did buy green onions from the grocery store, and you can do this too. Just make sure there are still roots on those green onions, because essentially you are buying a green onion plant. Put it in a food container that was prepared with the potting soil that I made, but I don't think I put enough sand in it for proper drainage, because the soil was way too wet, and onions don't seem to like that, or I should say wet for too long. And the roots did rot, but they were coming back, and the soil was just not drying out enough. So what I did, and what you can do for your food container garden too, is just move them where the best location for them might be. So I put my food containers underneath the eave of our house, so that way the rainwater wouldn't get in there and keep things too wet, because that's what I was struggling with. And honestly, my fault, because I didn't put enough sand in it, because I feel like I'm gardening in a sandbox as is. So adding more sand makes me feel like I'm just going backwards in my improving of the soil. Sand is still needed. I should have done it. My fault. But what I did do to help with that problem was, with the green onions that were struggling in the wet soil, I planted lettuce. And lettuce will take up some of that moisture, and this is actually looking really good. So, and honestly, it looks like my green onions are looking a lot better than they were before. And this is after rain we had that got in the container as well. So there's generally always a solution to garden issues that will inevitably come. Along with the slow release fertilizer that I have prepped this food container garden with, I still put in liquid fertilizer or compost tea, a diluted amount in some water, about every week or two, just to keep the nutrition in the container, because anything in this container is all your plant gets. It's up to you to provide the needs of these plants in their home. Also, something just to consider, but not a big deal, is possibly at the end of every season you might need to replace your food containers, which is not a big deal because, like I said, we and people you know probably have these on hand and are trying to get rid of them anyways, so might as well. But you don't have to throw out the soil in your food containers. Just reuse the soil, put it back in another food container, refresh it with some compost, some slow release fertilizer. Don't forget to put on more mulch, which will break down and help add to your soil mix. And move around your food container garden as need may be. And before you know it, you can be harvesting from your food container garden too. And if you would like other ideas of how you can grow too, take a look up in this corner because very soon there will be some quick and easy garden bed ideas for you, along with other videos you might enjoy. And be sure to check the channel because there's a lot more videos there and more videos to come. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I can't take it yet.